Natural disasters. Something no president wishes he has to go through. They're a major hit to the economy, a huge financial hit to the country. They slow down progress, and most of all, they devastate large areas of the country for extended periods of time. I should notice that being that I am a Hurricane Sandy survivor. Now, that being said, they do occur. For instance, if you look at this chart of wildfires every year, you'll see that 2008 was a pretty bad year. That was Bush's last year in office. But the others, you'll notice, they stay pretty much the same. You have some low years, you have some high years, but they pretty much even out. From time to time, you'll have volcanic eruptions. There's been a couple over the years, usually just innocuous ones in Alaska. It's from 2012, 16, 17. But once in a blue moon, you'll have a devastating one, like in 1980, where Mount St. Helens exploded, killing 57 people. Every year we have hurricanes. Now, many times they'll ride up the East Coast and there'll be some bad weather, but for the most part, they're not that devastating. But from time to time, you have one that becomes catastrophic. Like, for instance, during Bush's 8 years, he had Hurricane Katrina, one of the most costly hurricanes ever, tied for number one, $125 billion in damages, 1,833 fatalities, an absolute catastrophe. Then, during his 8 years, Barack Obama had Hurricane Sandy, which cost $70 billion in damage and killed 285 people and really devastated this area for a long time. There wasn't even electricity for about a month. So, over long periods of time, these things happen occasionally. But then President Trump got elected. Well, his first year in office, California had the most destructive wildfire season on record, with a total of 1.3 million acres of land just in California alone being devastated to wildfires, with the cost being, at the very least, $18 billion. A huge hit right out of the gate. Then, that very first summer, you have Hurricane Harvey slams into Texas, causes catastrophic flooding, upwards of 70 fatalities, and then ties Hurricane Katrina in damages for the most costly storm in American history with $125 billion. Then, a week later, Hurricane Irma hits, making it the fifth costliest hurricane in United States history. All right, so that's the first costliest and the second costliest. One right after another, the very first, not even in one full year, happened to hit the United States. I mean, what are the odds of that? Then 2 weeks after that, Hurricane Maria hits with 3,000 total fatalities, costing upwards of $90 billion, making it the third most expensive hurricane in United States history. And just to recap, President Bush had one of these right in the middle of his 8 years, and President Obama also had one of these right in the middle of his 8 years. President Trump, by month number 9, had 3 of them, plus the worst wildfires in the United States court history. Then, in the first 3 months of 2018, billion-dollar storms hit the United States 3 times. It says here that, by contrast, typically in the first 3 months, only one disaster costing about $1 billion when damages will occur. And that's going back to 1980. Then started the 2018 California wildfires, which actually eclipsed 2017, which was originally the worst in recorded history, which made 2018 now the worst in recorded history, with almost 2 million acres being burned and 100 people killed. Then in September of 2018, Hurricane Florence slammed into the Carolinas, causing catastrophic damage. 4. All right, we're up to 4 major hurricanes, not even 2 years in office. Then, right after that, still in 2018, we have the worst volcano eruption in almost 40 years. Okay, so not even in 2 years, the Trump administration had to deal with the worst volcano eruption in 40 years, the 2 deadliest and destructive wildfire seasons in ever recorded history, and 4 massive hurricanes. I mean, it's almost impossible at this point to suggest that they're not causing this. I mean, talk about blowing up your spot. 7 natural disasters inside of 2 years? Come on. And really, is it even so crazy to think that? I mean, what would it cost to make a volcano erupt? A small tremor? Where you think they don't have weapons that could shake the ground? I mean, the fires are easy. Anyone can start a fire. And what causes storms? It's usually the clashing of a cold front and a warm front. The lower, denser cold air pushes the hot air up, and it releases all its moisture and creates a storm. So the main factor in a storm is temperature. And they have on record HARP, you can look at many videos, they don't hide it, a program that shoots up lasers into the ionosphere, heating it up. They literally have facilities that can heat up pockets of air that they've been running experiments with for decades. So to say that they can't manipulate storms is a bit much. It's at least plausible. Now, something happened after the 2018 California wildfires where people started actually getting pinched for lighting them. Like this guy, Forrest Gordon Clark, who was accused of setting the Holy Fire. And Pacific Gas and Energy, who actually pleaded guilty this morning to being the main cause of the Paradise Camp fire that led to 85 deaths and wound up being the deadliest single fire in state history. Things got so bad in PG&E that Roger Kimmel, vice chairman of the investment banking firm Rothschild Incorporated, actually had to step down from the PG&E board. And wouldn't you know it, after all that was exposed, 2019 was considerably mild in comparison to the 2 worst years of all time. So you can't use this scam anymore, but you can still use your hurricanes. Because if you remember, September of 19, we were about to get hit with our 5th major hurricane, with Hurricane Dorian, which was headed straight from Mar-a-Lago. What a coincidence. And was about to hit a power plant when it suddenly stopped and made pretty much a 90-degree turn, which almost never happens. Now, if you take a look at it, you'll see where it got stopped dead in its tracks. Now watch Florida. See that little line there? All of a sudden that hits it and stops it dead in its tracks, and that's when it makes the turn. All right, here, watch it again. Watch the bottom of Florida right here. Something's hitting this. All right, I'm going to show it to you one more time. Just watch right here. See, now that stops it. And then it starts turning away from where it was just about to slam into. So whatever tech that they're using to cause these, clearly White Hats finally commandeered some of their own. All right, so they exposed the wildfires, taking that off the board. Now they showed them that they can combat their hurricanes. That takes that off the board. What else are they going to do? You can tell me it's a coincidence that they got hit with 4 major hurricanes, almost a 5th, the 2 worst wildfire seasons of all time, and the worst volcano eruption in 40 years, all one back to back to back to back to back to back after Trump got into office? Come on. These were to hit the economy. This was to bring doom and gloom on the public. These were to distract Trump from doing anything he could. These were terrorist attacks on the Trump administration. Just like while all this was going on, they also had the ongoing Mueller investigation. Then once that failed, they had the ongoing impeachment investigation. And while all that was going on, they have had 99% of the media constantly attacking the Trump administration and Trump supporters. All right, this is what we call all hands on deck. But now you take these off the table, and what do you get a few weeks later? They run the now infamous October 18th, 2019 coronavirus pandemic scenario in Manhattan. Hey guys, no big deal. We just happen to run an exact coronavirus pandemic 1 month before patient 0. Dude, this is totally normal. Well, actually, this is totally normal. This is what they did right before 9/11. In June of 2001, NORAD sponsored a multi-agency planning exercise involving the hypothetical, quote, hypothetical scenario of a cruise missile or an unmanned aerial vehicle launched by a terrorist group. And that's what I'm pretty sure hit the towers. I believe those were drone planes that hit, in my opinion. They were either a missile, which I've gone back and forth in my head, but I do know people who said they were working that day. Construction, you're working on the top of the building, who said they heard a freaking plane rip down the Hudson, looked up, and saw a plane smash into it. So through the years, everywhere, you work construction in the city, everyone's got stories like that. So many people saw the plane that I have personally met that I believe it was a plane. I just believe it was a drone plane, aka an unmanned aerial vehicle. And here's the cover for the proposal. Okay? It's got Osama bin Laden with planes. This is what they ran a couple months before 9/11. All right? This is what they do. The only difference is not everyone had such great internet back then, so stuff like this kind of flew under the radar. Well, not anymore. Now people are paying attention. People are actually looking for these things. And it's all being documented. So far, we've identified 4 layers of deep state attack. You got the first layer, which we're the most familiar with, which is 99% of the media just attacking the minds of the American people day in and day out and weaponizing them against the Trump administration. Then you have the second layer, which was to keep them tied up in the courts consistently for the entire time he's been running, with the Mueller investigation going on for 2 years and then rolling over into the impeachment scam. Then on top of that, you have the third layer, which I just went over in this video, which is the constant barrage of natural disasters, one after the other. And then, of course, you have the fourth layer, which is to attack the economy, to attack the stock market, which you saw in the beginning of 2018, where all of a sudden, out of nowhere, nothing happened. The market just dropped 666 points. Wow, what a coincidence. I mean, way to be smooth about it, Deep State. Like, hey, you think we should space maybe some of these natural disasters out? No! Throw all of them at them! And while you're at it, drop the stock market. Okay, how much? 666 points. Like, what are you, an evil villain in a freaking movie? All right, Dr. Claw, that's not obvious at all. I mean, now that the smoke is starting to clear on the first couple of years, just take a step back and look at all this. It's just glaringly obvious. And now you have COVID-19, which merges all four of these into one huge final attack going towards the 2020 election. Now, first things first, I'm not sure if this is exactly how they're classified, but we can all agree that COVID-19 is a natural disaster. Then you have layer one, the media, which has been taking this and absolutely twisting it around. For instance, this absolute disgrace of an article by Forbes, man dead from taking chloroquine product after Trump touts drug for coronavirus. So here we have the president who comes out, says, oh my God, there might be some hope for this. There's a drug that they're testing that seems to be working in patients. We're going to try and get it fast-tracked, keeping the public informed on what's going on. No, but here's Forbes, and most people, 90% of people, just read the headline. So to everyone who hates Trump and is just trying to pile on, this reads like he just got someone freaking killed, which is beyond abhorrent. They're trying to turn this, something that might be a hopeful. They just came out and said it might have a hope for a cure. Trying to turn this against him in such a nasty, vindictive way is really terrible. I mean, what about actor Daniel Day-Kim, who just gave a whole thing on how it cured him and how this could be the answer and all this stuff? Now, I'm not saying he's to blame. I'm just saying, why are you soloing out the president? He's not the only one saying this could work. It actually has worked in a bunch of people. Now, what most people won't see when they're just sharing this for the headline, which is exactly why she wrote this, they know exactly what they're doing. If you come down here, it states, instead of the drug form of chloroquine phosphate, the couple ingested a chloroquine phosphate product that's used to treat parasites in fish. And they OD'd on it. And, I feel horrible for both of them. But this is on the media. The media is creating a whole hysteria over this. So these two people who had no underlying conditions were worried about catching this virus that the media is making out to be the Black Plague every single day, because they are layer one of the attack force, panicked and took medicine that they had for their koi fish and OD'd on it. All right, so how dare you write this? This article should say, couple self-medicates with unproven drug and overdoses. And then down here, the only thing the article should say is, do not take any medicine without first consulting a doctor, and especially without finding out what dose to take. I mean, you can overdose on Tylenol, for crying out loud. So there's just a perfect example of the media attack layer. Which then takes us to the economic attack layer. Jeff Bezos has sold nearly $4.1 billion worth of Amazon shares in the past 11 days. February, all right, when there was next to no one infected here. This guy, oh, what a smart move. You just happened to sell $4.1 billion of your own share. This is how you tank a market. And it wasn't just him. There were top executives across the board that sold roughly $9.2 billion in shares of their own companies between the start of February and the end of last week, all right? They didn't have to do that. They could have waited this out, but no. Now the economy is tanking, and what happens then? It snowballs because everyone starts seeing their stocks drop, and then they panic to get out, which is the absolute wrong move. Investors pray for this stuff. If anything, you should wait till it all bottoms out and then buy it cheap. And again, they're not the only ones. Then you have senators like Kelly Loeffler, James Inhofe, Richard Burr, and Dianne Feinstein. What do you know? They knew this was getting crashed. And isn't it something that Dianne Feinstein is one of the ones who sold off her shares? You know, Dianne Feinstein, who was found to have a Chinese spy on her staff who worked for her for about 20 years. who of course she fired when the FBI told her about it. We're going to say, oh, that's all right, he's a nice guy, I'm going to leave him on. She's trying to tout that as her dealing with it. No, dude, this is some shady stuff. Now, let's be honest here. Who does Dianne Feinstein really represent? I mean, this is going back to the 90s. This has been known that her husband, Richard Bloom, is one of the biggest investors inside the nation of China. That's not a conflict of interest to have one of our senior senators' husband be a major Chinese investor, and for it to come out that, oops, her driver was a spy for 20 years? So as you see, the economic attack layers in full effect. And of course, it keeps them tied up. I mean, they had just passed phase 1 of the Chinese trade agreement. Oh, I guess that's all on hold. What are they doing? While all 4 layers are in attack mode, they're going for the 5th layer, which is voter fraud, by trying to use the American people needing relief as a quid pro quo to get vote by mail pushed, which is one of the number one ways they commit voter fraud. And what else was in the Democrats' 1,400-page response? You know, he's just trying to get money out to the people. But no, look at this freaking list. $100 million to NASA, $20 billion to USPS. Look at this. Just one thing after the other. We want to talk about collapsing economy. Just passed this bill. Holy crap. And you know what? He might have to just to get money out to the people. I mean, this is insane. And look, and this is the best one hidden amongst these 1,400 pages and millions and billions of dollars of our voter cash. This is why are they in charge of our money? This is just insane. But here, snuck into it, no voter ID law on page 650. They don't care about the American people getting money. They don't care about anyone in this country. Look right here. They want this drug to fail as a cure. They want the market to collapse. They could have all stayed in the market and rode this out. They are the market. They want this to be a disaster to the public. Look how many have just curiously happened, one right after the other, since Trump has been on. These people don't represent us, okay? They are here to collect as much money as humanly possible out of us and keep us fighting with each other forever. What did the news do? Did they report on the coronavirus pandemic exercise that was held in October of 2019? Nope, not a word. We had a report on it. And then, once it gets all out, they're scrambling saying, well, you know, we run these so we can test preparedness. Well, if you ran this for that purpose and determined that we weren't prepared for a coronavirus pandemic, then what the hell were you doing for the last 5 months? You're the most powerful people on Earth, with every connection on Earth to every manufacturer on Earth. So who's kidding who? This wasn't a preparedness test. This was a dry run. Exactly like the dry run they had right before 9/11. And when did the shit hit the fan? Everything all at once. The World Health Organization saying it's a pandemic. Tom Hanks coming out. Rudy Gobert coming out. And the NBA shutting down all on the same day, March 11th. Exactly 6 months to 9/11. So they're full of crap when they act like this was out of the blue. Here's a quote from January 11th, 2017 from Fauci. Quote, no doubt, Donald J. Trump will be confronted with a surprise infectious disease outbreak during his presidency. Fauci said that the Trump administration will not only be challenged by ongoing global health threats such as influenza and HIV, but also a surprise disease outbreak. This was their failsafe. This is their 9/11, and it's doing exactly what they wanted it to. It's hitting the economy. It takes Trump away from doing his rallies. It hits the unemployment gains that were so great over the last couple of years. It takes Biden out of the spotlight so he stops messing up. And above all else, after the failed racist campaign and the failed Russia campaign and the failed impeachment campaign, now they have something else that they can weaponize against President Trump. And it ain't gonna work. Where we go one, we go all.
This is the sound and the sight of firefighters losing ground in the suburbs of Los Angeles. Water! The notorious Santa Ana winds turning this fire into a blowtorch before sunrise in Corona.
Breaking news, Hurricane Harvey barreling into the Texas coastline as a Category 4 storm with 130-mile-an-hour winds. It's the first Category 4 storm to hit the U.S. in over a decade, threatening record rain totals of up to 35 inches throughout much of Texas that could render some areas uninhabitable for months. More than 150,000 people at this hour plunged into darkness, the president declaring a federal disaster for the state, and we are already hearing reports of significant damage, of collapsed buildings, of people perhaps trapped under the rubble. Our ABC News team is spread out along the coast breathless as thousands flee the path of destruction.
Irma made landfall about 90 minutes ago in the lower Keys, the chain of islands off the southern tip of Florida. The eye hit Cudjoe Key, about 20 miles east of Key West. Irma is now moving northward up the Gulf Coast toward us here in St. Pete Beach. This is a very wide storm. Hurricane or tropical storm force winds extend about 220 miles from the center. Some places could get as much as a foot of rain. Irma is already blamed for 3 deaths here in Florida after killing more than 24 as it tore across the Caribbean last week.
And good morning, everyone. 6:31 on the East Coast. We're coming on the air right now because Hurricane Maria has made landfall on Puerto Rico.
And this is the scene in Puerto Rico right now. A powerful Category 4 storm. Maria is hitting with 155-mile-an-hour winds, torrential rain, the strongest storm this island has faced in nearly a century.
I'm Steve Patterson in Paradise, California, where nearly the entire town has been incinerated by towering flames. Tonight, crews pushing the front of the fire back with an aerial assault.
The fire took everything.
The campfire destroying all of it. In Paradise, blocks gutted, 29 dead, hundreds missing, whole neighborhoods reduced to ruins.
President Trump has declared Hawaii's Big Island a disaster zone as fears grow about the lava and smoke from the Mount Kilauea volcano. The declaration clears the way for financial assistance for state and local governments to fix roads, parks, and water pipes damaged by the eruption.
After more than a week of fiery devastation, scientists are now watching and waiting for the volcano's next big move.
It is 5:01 a.m. on the East Coast, and the Carolinas are being swamped by these heavy rains and high winds from Hurricane Florence. Major damage is already being reported. The number of power outages has now jumped to more than 200,000. We are certainly not out of the woods yet. Dangerous water rescues taking place even as we speak. We want to get right to our team on the ground, beginning with Craig Melvin, who's in Wilmington, North Carolina. Craig, tell us, we can see you getting blown around out there.
Peter, since we checked in last hour, the winds have picked up considerably here in Wilmington, north of 65 miles per hour at last check. Those power outages that you mentioned also widespread here in Wilmington. Roughly 15,000 homes at least are without power, and the rains continue.